Well, hello there. Welcome back to our Tuesday Live. And this month we've been discussing training older women. Now, today's topic is to keep an eye on osteoporosis, but I kind of tossed up between including this in training older women or training women more broadly, women of menstruating age, teenage girls, because the risks for developing osteoporosis start at menarche. So as soon as your female client gets her period, so 12, 13 years old, then she's either working towards bone health or she's eroding bone health. And that work done really early is really important. Having said that, there's nothing we can do about the past. And if you're training older women, then keeping an eye out for osteoporosis is really important. Mainly because 80% of people living in America are living with osteoporosis in America are women. In Australia, 29% of all women are going to develop osteoporosis compared to just 10% of all men. And this is a disease that doesn't have overt symptoms, right? So you have to go and get a scan, or there's a number of resources which we'll discuss a bit later, but it's otherwise hidden until she gets a stress fracture from bumping her thigh on the table, right? So it's debilitating if you develop osteoporosis, and it's preventable with lifting weights and doing exercise. So if you're training older women, keep an eye on osteoporosis. So some of the risks include contraceptive pill, prolonged contraceptive pill use, prolonged oral contraceptives, particularly if you start at a young age. Women generally smaller muscle and bone mass, a smaller mass generally, which means we don't have the opportunities to really thicken our bones and muscles the same way men do, nor do we have the hormonal profile to go super heavy, super thick in our muscles. Another reason is women and girls to date haven't really been encouraged to lift heavy or lift hard or get bigger, where the stereotype and the cultural norm is to get smaller and to make ourselves less. So the kind of exercise we need to do is, powerlifting, but we're not encouraged to do it. And even if we are doing it, the number one barrier to that form of exercise, or any exercise at all, is pelvic floor dysfunction. So until our trainers are sort of getting over that hurdle, then we're not going to be doing that sort of exercise, which we really need to be doing as early as possible, right? Literally through puberty. If you have control over a child going through puberty, they need to lift weights. Okay. Women are also higher risk of developing autoimmune and inflammatory bowel diseases. Now, the medications involved in those diseases can affect our bone density, as well as inflammatory diseases, particularly when they're in the bowel, can affect our ability to absorb nutrients. So there's a few factors at play. Women who lose their menstrual cycle, so either through poor nutrition or over exercising, they are at even higher risk of developing not only osteoporosis, but developing it prematurely. So it's kind of a big deal. Osteoporosis awareness needs to start really early, much younger than what we're discussing it for now. But when your women are already older, so perimenopausal and older, keeping an eye on it and understanding it's going to develop around now is it's imperative you have that in the back of your mind when you're training these women. So with proper training, we can actually reverse it. So the most reliable way to diagnose osteoporosis is to get a bone scan. So DEXA scan is short, painless, will measure the density of your bones, and you can just you can just show up and get a scan. I'll put a link in the comments for your local one in Australia. And you'll get a Medicare rebate if you've been diagnosed already, or if you've got fractures. If you're 70 and older, if you have a chronic condition such as arthritis or celiac disease or liver disease or whatever, and if you've used corticosteroids for a long time. Um, so, that's a really great opportunity. If you don't want to get a scan, there is a risk or a fracture risk assessment tool, which I'll put that link in our comments as well. That's from the University of Sheffield, which will then inform you about whether or not you should maybe go get a scan. So if you're training midlife women, it would be really wise to be prescribing heavy weights. Heavy weights. So any exercise or weights where you're moving against gravity is heavy weights. The definition of heavy is about 6 reps. So if you're doing sets of 12, but they're hard, it's still not heavy enough to get those bone changes. Plyometric exercise, skipping, jumping, hopping, that also helps with bone density, but you want to go in more than one direction, which is why running alone or walking alone isn't enough. You need left to right circle movement. Now, we've already discussed pelvic floor dysfunction is the number one barrier to exercise for women, and both these exercises, the heavy weights and the plyometric training, will exacerbate those conditions if you haven't addressed them first. So address them first. Now, if your client already has osteopenia or osteoporosis, then it is safe to load the skeletal system with weights, but you need to do things in a much more controlled way because of their risk of fracture. So it is possible with advanced osteoporosis to do a box jump and fracture your foot on landing without a fall. So walking rather than running, low impact but impact weight bearing exercise, so still moving against gravity and weights, but done in a safe, conservative way. And then also just being mindful of vitamin D. You want to make sure they're getting 10 minutes a day outside in the sun because vitamin D, you get 90% from the sun, and it's one of the main nutrients of bone mass and bone density. So, training older women, keep an eye on osteoporosis. If you have any questions, feel free to message me. I always read your feedback, and I'll see. I'm pre-recording next week. We're in school holidays, so just visit my page or this site 12:30 next week.